Thank you so much, Daniel. That was completely fascinating, and we've already got some questions coming in. So
Sure.
I will start with those soon. I mean, just to sort of round up, going back to the beginning, and your work with emotional intelligence and that. Do you think that meditation sort of prefigured in your interest in emotional intelligence from an early sort of point, or do those sit separately in your mind?
Well, they're very overlapping, and I think that my interest in meditation was sparked by findings on emotions in the brain, which is what inspired me to write the book Emotional Intelligence. Remember, there are four parts. There's self-awareness, there's managing upsetting states, there's tuning into the other person, empathy, and putting that all together for effective relationships. And I see meditation as tuning up those first three. Definitely self-awareness, it's explicitly that. But then that gives you a platform for managing your distressing emotions and also for tuning into the experience of other people, for empathy. And then all of that helps with the mastery of emotional intelligence. And for those how-to watchers who want to know how to get better at emotional intelligence, I really encourage you to go to Key Step Media and look at the meditation paths, the emotional intelligence paths that develop specific strengths in each of these four capacities of the key competences in emotional intelligence.
So I just want to pick up on one thing there, and then we'll go to some audience questions, which is, I've noticed a trend of certain individuals online, potentially not the nicest of politics, something not the nicest of, shall I say, empathy, prioritizing meditation as a kind of tool to get ahead, to get on the grind, to sort of weaponizing it, get up at 5 a.m., meditate, yoga, in a way that personally doesn't feel very emotionally intelligent.
Sure.
Is it possible to take meditation and end up not being emotionally intelligent? Or do you think that they're not doing meditation properly? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I think that if you remember, I talked about empathy and the third kind of empathy, which is caring about other people. If you only have the first two, cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, you could be a very good manipulator, for example. I think that people who use mindfulness or emotional intelligence for their own ends lack the capacity to care. They don't care. They're not concerned about other people. And I think that's absolutely essential in cultivating these. We talk about the deep path and the wide path. The wide path is mindfulness everywhere. We're doing it in schools. There was just a huge study in the UK that showed that mindfulness in schools for every student theoretically was a good idea. But if you're doing it through teachers who are just doing it by rote, who don't embody it, it doesn't work. You need to be motivated. That's why those 3 steps matter, because motivation is key to the third step. So if taking it wide or using it for your own ends is possible, but it doesn't look at the deep possibilities, which really have to do with you evolving as a person and what you can become. And I find that the more interesting part of it.
That's a fascinating answer. Thank you. Okay, so on to some audience questions. David says, there have been some studies that have compared the effects of meditation to the effects of psychedelics. Have you run into this? Do you have any thoughts?
Yes. One of my good friends died recently. I knew him as Ram Dass. He was called Richard Alpert before. He was one of the Harvard professors who was fired for giving psychedelics to undergraduates, then became proselytizer before he went to India and decided that he would become a yogi. And his decision is quite interesting for this question, because he said, psychedelics are great for stepping out of your ordinary ego, but they only work while the chemical is active. And then, to use his phrase, afterward, you're the same schmuck you were before you went up. In other words, it doesn't change any personality trait of yours. That's why he was interested And that's why I got interested in these more lasting ways of changing things, either through emotional intelligence or meditation.
Fantastic answer, thank you. And actually, this links to Diana's question, who asks, I wanted to ask, what state it is that you enter when you meditate. One meditation teacher posited that a deep meditative state is a natural state or essence. Do you agree with that?
I would say that it's not helpful to keep any goal or any state in mind when you meditate, and just be with whatever comes up, because the learning is in being with what comes up and letting go. It's not in trying to get into some bliss state or some equanimity state. Maybe that'll happen, but being attached to that, it's just as bad as being attached to, I hate that guy. It's just another form of attachment. It's more subtle. They call them golden chains, but they're chains nonetheless. So I would say, if you follow, for example, the Tibetan path, getting into an essence which is really beyond thought, is a goal. But even holding that in mind, this is the paradox of non-dual practices. Holding any goal in mind isn't helpful. Doing the practice is helpful.
Wise words. Harry asks, how does meditation link to other lifestyle aspects like diet, exercise, the type of work? Do you find that you need these other elements to successfully meditate?
I would say that you need exercise and diet to be healthy, and that meditation can help with that if that's your goal. So putting them all together, of course, is the best. Can you meditate without a healthy diet and without exercise? Sure. You can do any one of those without the others. So we in the West like to do it all because we want it all. And there's no reason not to. But yes, you can meditate without exercise. I don't recommend it for health reasons. You can meditate without eating a healthy diet. Don't recommend it for health reasons.
Okay, so we've got two questions that are, I think, linking to one another from Dom and Derek. I'll just sort of summarize, which is basically, you sit down to meditate. How do you, quote, switch the brain off or get that swirl of thoughts in your head to calm down? Dom specifically says, is there a method to help switching to a more focused mindset? Derek says, how do I stop going down rabbit holes?
Well, there are two kinds of answers. One is, the reason I showed you drop it was because that's a way to drop it, to let go of those thoughts. But the other is that what you're learning is to let go of the things that are keeping you in that negative state. That is what the meditation is about. Remember, it's becoming aware of your breath, and then as thoughts or emotions intrude, you're talking about intrusive thoughts and emotions here, learning to recognize them as such and just be with them, accept them, and let them go. And what Golden found is research at the University of California was that the more you do it, remember the dose response, the easier it becomes. So you could say, in a sense, that the competence that you're mastering in meditation is the art of letting go. And the more you master the art of letting go, the quote, better, that is to say, less captured by intrusive thoughts and feelings, your meditation will be.
Wonderful. A specific question here from an anonymous attendee who says, I often find it easy to start a meditation practice by listening to a song. Does that make my practice any worse? Sort of this idea of easing into it.
Whatever works for you. I'm not going to say don't do it. But the question is, what do you do once you get eased into it? And I don't know what your meditation practice is. Some people use a mantra, which is a sound that they repeat silently as a focus. It's the same as meditating on your breath, because the ultimate instruction, no matter what you're doing, is to see when thoughts come up and intrude, and then to let go, and to go back to the focus, whether it's the sound or whether it's the breath. So that's really what you're doing. That's the nub of the practice.
Another question on practice from Margaret, who says, I'd always thought that meditation would need to take at least 30 to 60 minutes. It feels like you're suggesting shorter periods are also beneficial. Is that true?
You know, one of the Tibetan masters I studied with, was fortunate to study with, said, you know, in the Tibetan approach, we like to say short sessions many times. And what they mean there is quite interesting, because when you're in the meditation, when you're actually focused on the meditation, that's what they call a session. If you're sitting on your cushion for 30 minutes in distraction, they don't call that meditation. They call that ordinary thought. So it depends how you're keeping score, so to speak. And 30 to 60 minutes might come naturally with time. I'm saying for beginners, take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, do it during the day whenever you can, as you remember. But do it repeatedly. And if you do so, it will become easier and easier to have these longer sessions. 30 to 60, I think for a beginner is inviting getting used to just being distracted during meditation. So do what you can and stay focused and remember to bring your mind back continually. Each time you do that, it starts a session.
I really like that. Short and often. An anonymous attendee has asked about your thoughts on transcendental meditation. Is that something you've come across?
Yeah, I started with transcendental meditation. It uses a mantra, and I thought it was an excellent practice. I got interested in, when I was in India, in other methods, particularly insight meditation, which comes to the West as mindfulness. The reason being that you can get into a very blissful state using a mantra, and even what's called the transcendental state. The question is, does it change who you are after you're done? And the insight meditation practices seem to do that in a way I found fascinating. So I say there's nothing wrong with TM. There's a lot to speak for it, but there are literally hundreds of different meditation practices. You know, Sufism uses song and chanting. A number of ecstatic approaches. Hasidic Judaism uses the same. Some early Christianity uses the Kyrie eleison as a mantra. They do in Greek Orthodoxy still. In other words, around the world, spiritual traditions have embraced different ways of meditating. TM is one of many. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, there are many other choices.
I want to pick up on something you said there, which is, does it change you as a person? And there's a big debate going on in the UK at the moment. It's the beginning of January. Our Prime Minister has just said that we need to do more maths. As kids, they need to do maths up until the very end. And I've also seen some discourse that says, you know, why are we teaching kids to do meditation? You know, it's just sitting quietly. What's the point? What's the sort of the hard skills that you're learning by sitting quietly? Have you ever come across that pushback?
You know, yeah. Think about it. What is the key thing schools are designed for? To help children learn. What mental capacity is fundamental to learning? Attention. What trains attention? Meditation. What we call meditation is actually attention training. When you get used to recognizing distracting thoughts and bringing your mind back to the focus, you're training attention. And the two main things we find are benefits of, for example, that breath practice, are you get calm, which gets you clear, and your attention gets stronger. There was a study done at University of California, again, with students, which showed that if they did the breath practice regularly, they got better scores on the graduate school admissions exams, appreciably better, which means they had learned more. And what this suggests is that children learn more if you teach them how to manage their emotions, how to recognize what they're feeling and deal with it, how to empathize with others, helps them get along better. And all of these things are capacities any parent would want any child to have.
But of course, you have to tread a tightrope, because as you said, if you do it for the wrong reasons, if you do it for the wrong intentions, then you don't change. And if suddenly we go, yes, okay, we can do better in school, we can do better exams, I think the Buddha says, you can't achieve enlightenment if you're seeking it. Do you think that it's quite a hard turret to follow? You should teach kids, but
well,
not.
See, the corollary of you can't achieve enlightenment if you're seeking it is you can't achieve enlightenment if you're not seeking it either. So that's one of those paradoxes. I think teaching something like mindfulness to kids, or social emotional learning, which is emotional intelligence applied in the school curriculum, is a basic help in life. I don't see anything wrong with that. If some people feel they want to go deeper, that's great. That's up to them. Because I think that only works if you're motivated. So if you're teaching how to do better at maths, which means how to pay attention to what the teacher is telling you, how to pay attention to your homework, how to pay attention when you're doing a test, well, it turns out that managing your emotions is key to that, because emotions and attention go together. If you're upset, that's where your attention goes. If you're focused, if you're calm and you're clear, then you're in control of your attention. And we want our kids to have control of their attention. If they decide individually, I'm going to pursue a deeper understanding of this, that's great too. Go for it.
A final question from an anonymous attendee, which I think is a lovely one, which is, how did mindfulness give rise to change in you? How did meditation change you?
Oh, you have to ask my wife. I'm not sure I could answer that question.
Oh, Daniel, thank you so much. That was an absolute pleasure. Completely fascinating and inspiring. I hope audience you enjoyed too. Please do check out Why We Meditate, the science and practice of clarity and compassion. Thank you all for tuning in and for your brilliant, many, many questions. Daniel, I'll give the final word to you.
Keep it up. Don't give up. Keep practicing.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.